Most men's midlife crisis involves a Harley-Davidson or a 20-something secretary. Mine started with discovering my wife was screwing the soccer coach while I was rewiring the cardiac wing at St. Mary's Hospital. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent my days keeping people's hearts beating while mine was getting ripped out by a woman who couldn't tell a circuit breaker from a light switch. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Ethan Calloway, and I'm 42 years old. I've been an electrician at the hospital for 18 years, married to Lila for 16, and apparently blind as a bat for the last 6 months. You'd think someone who works with power lines for a living would notice when the current in his own house starts flowing in the wrong direction. The first sign should have been the gym membership. Lila had about as much interest in fitness as I had in her monthly book club discussions about 50 Shades of whatever. But suddenly, at 39, she developed this burning desire to get in shape. Not at a normal hour, mind you. 10 o'clock at night, when most decent people are settling in for the evening news. I need to work out when it's less crowded, she'd say, grabbing her designer water bottle and those yoga pants that cost more than my work boots. You know how self-conscious I get. Self-conscious. Right. The woman who ran a boutique clothing store and spent half her day telling other women how great they looked in overpriced scarves was suddenly worried about judgment from strangers at Planet Fitness. Then came the early morning inventory checks at her shop. Lila's boutique was attached to our house, a converted garage space that she'd turned into her little fashion empire. Suddenly, she needed to be there at 7 in the morning checking stock and organizing the back room. This from a woman who used to complain if I ran the coffee maker before 8. But the real kicker was the phone. Lila had always been attached to that thing like it was a life support system, but now she guarded it like state secrets. Face down on tables, screen locked tighter than Fort Knox, and God forbid I walked into a room while she was texting. The phone would disappear faster than free beer at a construction site. I might have stayed oblivious if it weren't for Marlene Henderson, our neighbor across the street. Marlene was 47, divorced, and had turned nosiness into an art form. She knew more about our neighborhood than the Postal Service, and she had a front row seat to everyone's business from her kitchen window. The text came on a Tuesday morning while I was replacing faulty wiring in the hospital's emergency room. Ethan, you need to see this. Your wife's got company again. Tall guy, brown hair with blonde highlights. They're taking romantic walks around the lake like they're starring in some cheesy movie. Pretty sure you're still the short, dark-haired guy I married off 16 years ago, right? I stared at that message for a solid 5 minutes, my wire strippers hanging loose in my hand. The emergency room hummed around me with its usual controlled chaos, but everything felt muffled, like I was underwater. I texted back, "You sure it's not just a customer? Maybe someone interested in buying something expensive?" Marlene's response was immediate. "Honey, unless she's selling kisses by the lake, this ain't about retail." My hands were shaking as I finished the wiring job. 18 years of marriage, and I was getting relationship updates from the neighborhood watch committee. I felt like the last person to know that my own house was on fire. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I asked Marlene to keep an eye on things, really keep an eye on things. "You want me to spy on your wife?" she asked when I called her during my lunch break. "I want you to document what you see," I corrected. "There's a difference." "Ethan, are you sure you want to know?" I looked around the hospital break room, at the vending machines and motivational posters about teamwork and excellence. My co-workers were eating sandwiches and complaining about overtime. Normal people living normal lives, not getting intelligence reports about their spouses from amateur private investigators. "Yeah, Marlene, I need to know." She must have heard something in my voice because her tone got serious. "Okay, honey, I'll keep track of things. But Ethan, whatever I find out, you didn't hear it from me if anyone asks." Deal. The next few days crawled by like a brownout in summer. I went through the motions at work, rewiring circuits and replacing blown fuses, but my mind was somewhere else. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. Marlene was thorough, I'll give her that. She sent me timestamps, descriptions, even photos taken from her upstairs window with a zoom lens that would make a sports photographer jealous. Thursday, 10:15 a.m. She's at the boutique with him. Same guy. They're in the back room with the door closed. Been in there 40 minutes. Friday, 2:30 p.m. They just left together in his car. Blue Honda Civic, license plate starts with JDR, heading toward the lake. Saturday, 11 a.m. Ethan, they're at the Pineview cabin rental. You know, the one with the romantic lakeside view that charges $200 a night? I got pictures of them going in together. You want me to send them? I stared at that last message for 10 minutes before responding. Send them. The photos were grainy, but clear enough. Lila in her favorite sundress, the yellow one I'd bought her for her birthday 2 years ago, and him, tall, athletic, with that professionally styled hair that screamed, I spend more on grooming than most people spend on groceries. They were holding hands walking up to the cabin door, and in the last photo, he had his arm around her waist, while she laughed at something he'd said. I'd seen that laugh before. It used to be for me. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to see this for myself. The Pineview cabin was a 15-minute drive from our house, tucked back in the woods with a perfect view of Mirror Lake. I'd driven past it hundreds of times over the years, always thinking it looked like the kind of place you'd take someone special for a romantic getaway. Turns out I was right. I parked my truck behind a cluster of pine trees about 50 yards away and walked through the woods until I had a clear view of the cabin. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they'd hear it from inside. The lights were on, and through the large picture window, I could see them clearly. Lila was sitting on the couch, her legs tucked under her in that way she did when she was completely comfortable. He was next to her, close enough that their shoulders touched, and they were talking and laughing like old friends, or new lovers. Then he leaned over and kissed her. Not a quick peck. Not an accidental brush of lips. A real kiss, the kind that said they'd done this before and planned to do it again. Lila's hand went to the back of his neck, and she kissed him back with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen from her in months. I stood there in the woods, watching my wife of 16 years make out with a stranger like teenagers at prom, and felt something inside me break. Not my heart. That was still beating and keeping me upright. Something deeper. Something that had to do with trust and respect, and the basic assumption that the person you share a bed with isn't sharing herself with someone else. I was about to turn around and leave when I heard footsteps behind me. Dad, what are you doing out here? I spun around to find Owen, my 16-year-old son, standing there with his fishing pole and tackle box. He'd been heading down to the lake for some evening fishing, a hobby we'd shared since he was 8. Oh, hey buddy, I said, trying to sound casual while my world collapsed around me. Just counting deer. Thought I saw a big buck through the trees. Owen looked past me toward the cabin, and I held my breath. The last thing I needed was for my son to see what I'd just witnessed. Deer, huh? He said, but something in his expression told me he wasn't buying it. Owen was a smart kid, observant like his old man. You okay, Dad? You look kind of pale. Just tired from work. Long day rewiring the ICU. I put my arm around his shoulders and steered him away from the cabin. Come on, let's get you down to that fishing spot before it gets too dark. We walked toward the lake together, and I tried to act normal while my brain processed what I'd just seen. Owen chattered about school and his plans for the weekend, but I barely heard him. All I could think about was Lila's hand on that man's neck, the way she'd smiled at him, the comfortable intimacy between them that spoke of more than just a few stolen kisses. After I got Owen set up with his fishing gear, I drove home in a daze. Lila's car was already in the driveway, and the lights were on in the boutique. She was probably destroying evidence or creating an alibi. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, trying to figure out what to say to her. In the end, I said nothing. I walked into the house, grabbed a beer from the refrigerator, and sat down at the kitchen table. When Lila came in 20 minutes later, humming some song I didn't recognize, I just looked at her. "How was your day?" she asked, the same question she'd asked me every day for 16 years. "Interesting," I said. "Yours?" "Oh, same old stuff. Helped Mrs. Patterson find a dress for her daughter's wedding, organized some inventory, nothing exciting." "She was good, I'll give her that." Looked me right in the eye while she lied through her teeth. If I hadn't seen her with my own eyes, I might have believed her. "That's nice," I said. "Mrs. Patterson's daughter is getting married? When's the wedding?" For just a second, Lila's expression flickered. "Oh, next month sometime. I don't remember the exact date." I nodded and took another sip of my beer. Well, I'm sure she'll look beautiful. That night, I lay in bed next to my wife and listened to her breathe. She fell asleep quickly, the way people do when they don't have anything weighing on their conscience. Or maybe she was just tired from her afternoon activities. I stared at the ceiling and made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. First, I was going to find out exactly what I was dealing with. Who was this guy? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, what was I going to do about it? By morning, I had a plan. I've always been methodical. It comes with the territory when you're an electrician. You can't just start yanking wires and hope for the best. You have to understand the system, trace the connections, and figure out where the problem is before you can fix it. Or in this case, before you can burn the whole thing down. The first step was identifying the other man. Marlene's photos weren't clear enough to make out his face in detail, but she'd gotten his license plate, JDR 847. A quick call to my buddy Rick, who worked at the DMV, gave me what I needed. "Joel David Rayton," Rick said over the phone. 33 years old, lives on Maple Street. Clean driving record, registered to vote as an independent. "Why, you thinking of buying his car?" Joel Rayton. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. "What's he do for work?" "Hang on, let me check. Looks like he's listed as a coach at Roosevelt High School. Soccer and track." Roosevelt High. That's where Owen went to school. I felt my stomach drop as the pieces started coming together. Lila had been to several of Owen's soccer games this season, more than usual. She'd claimed she was trying to be more supportive, but now I wondered if she'd been supporting more than just our son's athletic career. "Rick, I need you to do me another favor. Can you run a background check on this guy? Nothing illegal, just public record stuff?" "Sure thing, Ethan. But you mind me asking why you're suddenly interested in high school soccer coaches?" "Let's just say I'm considering a career change." The background check revealed more than I'd expected. Joel Rayton had been hired at Roosevelt High 2 years ago after leaving his previous job at a private school in Chicago under what the records called unclear circumstances. No criminal charges, but enough of a cloud that he'd had to take a step down to a smaller school district. I also found out he was single, lived alone in a rental house, and had a reputation around town as something of a ladies' man. Perfect. My next step was financial reconnaissance. I had access to our joint bank accounts, credit card statements, and Lila's business records. What I found made my pressure spike. Over the past 3 months, there had been several unusual charges. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel rooms booked during times when Lila claimed to be at trade shows or visiting her sister in Springfield. A jewelry purchase for $400 that had never materialized as a gift for me or anyone else I knew about. But the real smoking gun was a receipt I found tucked in her purse while she was in the shower. Pine Lodge Resort, 2 nights, premium lakeside suite. $650. The same weekend she'd told me she was going to a boutique owners conference in Chicago. I photographed everything: bank statements, receipts, credit card bills. I also started keeping a detailed log of her movements, cross-referencing them with Marlene's observations. The pattern was clear. Lila and Joel had been seeing each other regularly for at least 4 months, possibly longer. The next phase of my investigation required getting closer to the source. I started paying attention to Owen's conversations about school, particularly anything involving the soccer team or Coach Rayton. "Coach Joel's pretty cool," Owen mentioned one evening over dinner. "He's been talking about maybe starting a summer league for kids who want to keep playing in the off-season." "Coach Joel?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Is that what you guys call him?" "Yeah, he's not real formal like some of the other teachers. He actually knows stuff about soccer, not like Coach Martinez who just yells a lot." Lila looked up from her salad. "He does seem very dedicated," she said. "I've seen him staying late after practices, working with individual players." "I'll bet he has," I thought. "You've talked to him?" "Just briefly, at a few games. Parent-teacher stuff, you know." Owen nodded. "Mom's been coming to more games lately. Coach Joel said it's great to see parents getting involved." I'm sure he did. That weekend, I decided to do some field reconnaissance. There was a soccer game on Saturday morning, and I told Lila I'd come along to watch Owen play. She seemed nervous about the idea, which only confirmed my suspicions. "You don't have to come," she said. "I know you're tired from work, and you've got that project in the garage you wanted to finish." "The garage can wait. I want to see our son play." Roosevelt High's soccer field was packed with parents and students. I spotted Joel Rayton immediately. He was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, athletic, with that carefully casual style that probably took an hour to achieve. He wore his authority lightly, joking with the players and charming the parents, and he was definitely charming my wife. I watched from the bleachers as Lila made her way down to the sideline, ostensibly to get a better view of the game. She ended up standing near the team bench, close enough to chat with Coach Joel during timeouts. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language told the whole story. The way she leaned in when he spoke, the way he touched her arm when making a point, the shared smiles that had nothing to do with soccer. At halftime, Joel looked up into the stands and waved. For a split second, I thought he was waving at me, but then I realized Lila was waving back. They had their own little communication system going. That's when I made my decision. It was time to move from intelligence gathering to direct action. After the game, I approached Joel while he was packing up equipment. Owen was changing out of his uniform, and Lila was talking to some other parents, so I had a few minutes alone with my wife's boyfriend. "Coach Rayton, I'm Ethan Calloway, Owen's dad." He looked up and smiled, extending his hand. "Mr. Calloway, great to finally meet you. Owen's a fantastic player, really dedicated." His handshake was firm, confident. He looked me straight in the eye without a hint of guilt or nervousness. Either he was a sociopath or he didn't know that I knew. "I appreciate you taking such a personal interest in the players," I said. "Lila tells me you've been very hands-on with your coaching approach." Something flickered in his expression, but he kept smiling. "I believe in building relationships with my players and their families. It makes for better teamwork." "I'm sure it does. In fact, I'd love to talk to you more about your coaching philosophy sometime. Maybe we could grab a beer, discuss Owen's development." "That sounds great," Joel said, but he was already looking past me toward where Lila was standing. "I'll have to check my schedule and get back to you." "No rush. I'm a patient man. I believe in taking my time, making sure I understand a situation completely before I make any moves." This time, he definitely caught the undertone in my voice. His smile faltered slightly, and he gave me a more careful look. "Well," he said, "I should probably get this equipment put away. Nice meeting you, Mr. Calloway." "Oh, I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of each other, Coach." I walked away, feeling oddly satisfied. I'd fired the first shot across his bow, let him know that I wasn't just some oblivious husband. Now I had to wait and see how he'd react. The answer came sooner than I expected. That evening, Lila was unusually quiet during dinner. She picked at her food and kept checking her phone, which she tried to hide by keeping it in her lap. When Owen went upstairs to do homework, she finally spoke up. "How did you like the game today?" "It was educational," I said. "I learned a lot about teamwork and strategy." "Coach Rayton seemed to make a good impression on you." "Did he? I thought I made more of an impression on him." Lila set down her fork and looked at me directly. "Ethan, is everything okay? You've been acting strange lately." "Strange how?" "I don't know. Distant. Like you're thinking about something else all the time." I almost laughed. She was cheating on me with our son's soccer coach, and I was the one acting strange. "Just work stuff," I said. "You know how it is. Lots of complicated wiring problems to solve." "Maybe you should take some time off. We could go somewhere together, just the two of us. Remember how we used to take those weekend trips to Lake Geneva?" The suggestion was so ironic I had to bite my tongue to keep from saying something I'd regret. She wanted to take a romantic trip with me while she was screwing another man. The audacity was almost impressive. "That sounds nice," I said. "When were you thinking?" "I don't know. Maybe next month? I'd have to check my schedule at the boutique, make sure I can get away." "Right. Wouldn't want to interfere with your inventory management." She gave me another sharp look, but before she could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Marlene. "Emergency meeting. Your place or mine?" I excused myself and walked across the street to Marlene's house. She was waiting at her kitchen table with a laptop, several printed photos, and an expression that meant business. "Sit down, honey," she said. "We need to talk." "What did you find?" "More than you probably want to know." She turned the laptop toward me. "I've been doing some digging into your wife's new boyfriend." The screen showed a Facebook page for Joel Rayton. His profile was mostly private, but Marlene had managed to find some public photos and posts. What I saw made my stomach turn. There were pictures of Joel with various women over the past few years, always in romantic settings. Dinners, concerts, weekend getaways, and in the comments, there were hints of a pattern. Women talking about how charming he was, how he'd made them feel special, and then nothing. The relationships seemed to end abruptly, with no explanation. "There's more," Marlene said. She clicked to another tab, showing a local news article from Chicago. "Remember how his background check mentioned he left his previous job under unclear circumstances?" I leaned forward to read the headline. "Private school coach resigns amid allegations of inappropriate relationships." The article was vague on details, but it mentioned that Joel Rayton had resigned from his position at an exclusive private school after allegations of unprofessional conduct with parents of students. No charges were filed, but the school had asked for his resignation. "He's done this before," I said. "Multiple times, from what I can tell. He targets married women, usually mothers of his players, charms them, makes them feel special, has his fun, and then moves on when things get complicated." I stared at the screen, feeling a mixture of rage and humiliation. My wife wasn't special. She wasn't the love of Joel's life or even a serious relationship. She was just another conquest, another bored housewife to be seduced and discarded. "There's one more thing," Marlene said softly. "I think you should see this." She handed me a printed photo, obviously taken with her telephoto lens. It showed Lila and Joel in the parking lot behind her boutique, but they weren't alone. There was another man with them, someone I didn't recognize. The three of them were standing close together, talking seriously about something. "Who's the third guy?" I asked. "I'm not sure, but I think he might be Joel's friend. I've seen him around town with Joel a few times. The thing is, Ethan, the way they're all standing together, the way they're talking, it looks like they're planning something." I studied the photo more carefully. Lila had a manila envelope in her hands, and she was showing the contents to both men. Joel was pointing at something in the envelope, while the third man took notes on a small pad. "When was this taken?" "Yesterday afternoon, right after you left for work." A cold feeling settled in my chest. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was something bigger, more organized, and I had no idea what they were planning. Marlene, I need you to keep watching them. Document everything. And if you see them meeting with this third guy again, try to get close enough to hear what they're talking about. Ethan, honey, maybe it's time to call a lawyer or the police. Not yet. I need to know what they're up to first. Besides, what am I going to tell the cops? My wife is cheating on me and having mysterious meetings? That's not illegal. But if they're planning something, then I need proof. Real proof, not just suspicions and grainy photos. I walked back to my house with my head spinning. The affair was bad enough, but now it looked like there was some kind of conspiracy involved. I needed to step up my game, get closer to the action, find out what they were really planning. It was time to stop being the victim and start being the predator. The next week, I became a different person. Not obviously, I still went to work, still fixed broken circuits and replaced burnt-out transformers. But underneath, I was rewiring myself, changing from a passive observer into someone who took action. My first move was to bug Lila's boutique. It sounds more dramatic than it actually was. I didn't need spy equipment or illegal surveillance devices. I just used what I had on hand. A baby monitor with a two-way radio function that we'd bought when Owen was little and never thrown away. The transmitter was small enough to hide behind a picture frame, and the receiver worked from anywhere in the house. I installed it on a Wednesday morning while Lila was at her gym session. The boutique had a back office where she kept her computer and did paperwork, and I figured that's where any important conversations would happen. I hid the transmitter behind a framed photo of our family vacation to Yellowstone. The irony wasn't lost on me. The first few days of surveillance were boring. Lila spent most of her time helping customers, talking to suppliers, and doing normal business stuff. But on Friday afternoon, I hit the jackpot. I was in the garage, supposedly organizing my tools, when I heard Joel's voice come through the baby monitor. "Are you sure about this?" he was saying. "It's a big step." "I'm sure," Lila replied. "I can't keep living like this, pretending everything's fine, pretending I'm happy. It's hurting me." "And you think he'll just go along with it?" "He won't have a choice. Once the papers are filed, it's out of his hands." Divorce papers. She was planning to divorce me. Part of me felt relieved. At least she wasn't planning to keep up the charade indefinitely. But another part of me was furious. She was discussing the end of our marriage with her boyfriend like it was a business transaction. "What about Owen?" Joel asked. "He's 16, old enough to choose where he wants to live. And honestly, Ethan's never been that involved in his life anyway. Always working, always tired. I think Owen would be better off with us." Us. She was already thinking of herself and Joel as a unit, already planning their future together. And she wanted to take my son. "The house is the tricky part," Lila continued. "It's in both our names, but I put more money into the down payment. My lawyer thinks I can get at least 60% of the equity, maybe more if I can prove that Ethan's been neglecting his family responsibilities." "What about the boutique?" "That's mine, free and clear. I built it from nothing, and all the business records are in my name. He can't touch it." I listened to them plan the dismantling of my life with the same casual tone they might use to discuss weekend plans. They talked about custody arrangements, asset division, and how to minimize Joel's involvement in the divorce proceedings to avoid any awkwardness at the school. But the most infuriating part was how they talked about me. Like I was some kind of obstacle to be overcome, rather than a human being whose life they were destroying. "He's going to be hurt," Joel said. And for a moment I thought he might have some shred of conscience. "He'll get over it," Lila replied. "Honestly, I think he's been checking out of this marriage for years. He probably won't even be that surprised." Wrong, I thought. I'm going to be very surprised, just not in the way you expect. After they finished their planning session and Joel left, I sat in my garage for a long time, processing what I'd heard. My wife was going to divorce me, take my son, and grab as much of our assets as she could. and she was doing it all with the help of the man she'd been cheating with. But here's the thing about being an electrician. You learn to think systematically. When a circuit fails, you don't just replace random components and hope for the best. You trace the problem back to its source, and then you fix it properly. Lila and Joel thought they had all the advantages. They thought I was oblivious, passive, and unprepared. They were about to learn that they'd seriously underestimated their opposition. My counterattack began that weekend. First, I made copies of everything: bank records, credit card statements, business documents, insurance policies, anything that might be relevant in a divorce proceeding. I also started documenting Lila's affair in detail, with dates, times, locations, and photographic evidence courtesy of Marlene's surveillance operation. But I didn't stop there. If Lila wanted to play dirty, I was going to show her what dirty really looked like. I started with Joel's car. On Sunday night, while he was at a faculty meeting at the school, I paid a visit to his driveway. I didn't do anything destructive. I'm not a vandal. But I did make a few small modifications to his Honda Civic that would make his life interesting. The first modification was to his car alarm. I rewired it so that instead of the normal chirping sound, it would play "You're Cheatin' Heart" by Hank Williams at full volume whenever he locked or unlocked the car. It took me about 20 minutes to install a small MP3 player and speaker system, and I programmed it to play the song 3 times in a row before shutting off. The second modification was to his air conditioning system. I installed a small device that would release the smell of rotten eggs whenever he turned on the AC. Not dangerous, just extremely unpleasant. The third modification was my personal favorite. I programmed his GPS system to give directions to the Pine Lodge Resort whenever he tried to navigate anywhere else. No matter where he wanted to go, his GPS would try to send him to the same place where he'd been taking my wife for their romantic getaways. I was back home within an hour, and Joel never knew I'd been there. Monday morning, I got a call from Marlene while I was at work. "Ethan, you need to hear this. Joel's having car trouble, and he's not happy about it." "What kind of trouble?" "Well, first his car alarm started playing country music at 6 in the morning and woke up half the neighborhood. Then he called a tow truck because his car smelled like a sewer. And apparently, his GPS is broken because it keeps trying to send him to some resort instead of the school." I tried to sound concerned. "That's weird. Maybe he should take it to a mechanic." "Oh, he did. The mechanic couldn't find anything wrong with it. Said all the electronics looked fine, but sometimes cars just develop mysterious problems." Mysterious problems. Yeah, that happens sometimes. The car modifications were just the beginning. Over the next few days, I escalated my campaign against Joel in small but increasingly annoying ways. I signed him up for every spam mailing list I could find online. His email inbox was soon flooded with offers for weight loss supplements, get-rich-quick schemes, and adult dating services. I also called his landlord, pretending to be a concerned neighbor, and reported that there were strange smells and loud noises coming from his house at all hours. The landlord started making surprise visits to check on the property, but my masterpiece was the soccer field incident. I knew that Joel had practice every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, and that he always left his gym bag in the equipment shed while the team warmed up. On Thursday, I paid a visit to Roosevelt High School. Getting into the equipment shed was easy. The lock was older than Owen, and I'd learned to pick locks as part of my electrical training. Sometimes you need to get into locked electrical panels in emergencies. Joel's gym bag was right where I expected it to be, filled with his coaching clothes, whistle, clipboard, and other equipment. I didn't take anything or damage anything. I just added something. A small vial of liquid that I'd purchased from a hunting supply store. It was called skunk scent, and it was designed to mask human odor when hunting. A few drops would make you smell like you'd been sprayed by a skunk, and the odor would last for hours. I put 3 drops on Joel's coaching shirt and closed the bag. An hour later, I got a text from Owen. "Dad, something weird happened at practice today. Coach Joel had to go home because he smelled really bad. Like, Really, really bad. The whole team was laughing. I texted back, "That's strange. Maybe he stepped in something." Maybe, but it was weird because the smell seemed to be coming from his clothes, not his shoes. That evening, Lila was unusually quiet during dinner. She kept checking her phone and seemed distracted. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just some drama at Owen's school. Apparently one of the coaches had some kind of hygiene issue today." "Hygiene issue?" "He smelled terrible during practice. Had to cancel the session early and go home. The kids were making jokes about it." I made sympathetic noises while internally celebrating. Joel's reputation was starting to suffer, and he had no idea why. But the real breakthrough came on Friday night. I was monitoring the baby monitor when I heard Lila talking on the phone. She was in the boutique's back office, and from her tone, she was talking to Joel. "I don't understand what's happening," she was saying. "First your car, now this thing at school. It's like you're cursed or something." I couldn't hear Joel's side of the conversation, but from Lila's responses, he was clearly frustrated. "No, I don't think it's a coincidence. But what else could it be?" "What do you mean, sabotage? Who would do that?" "Ethan. That's ridiculous. Ethan doesn't even know about us." There was a long pause, and then Lila's voice got sharper. "What do you mean, you think he suspects something? Did something happen that I don't know about? You talked to him at the soccer game? What did you say?" "Joel, you're being paranoid. Ethan's not smart enough to figure this out, and he's definitely not devious enough to do anything about it even if he did." Not smart enough, not devious enough. We'd see about that. "Look," Lila continued, "maybe we should cool things down for a while, just until whatever's happening with you gets sorted out. I can't afford to have any suspicion falling on me right now, not with the divorce papers being prepared." Another pause. "I know you're frustrated, but we have to be smart about this. We've come too far to screw it up now because you're having a run of bad luck." After she hung up, I sat in my garage, thinking about what I'd heard. Joel was getting suspicious, which meant I needed to be more careful. But I'd also learned something important. They were planning to cool things down, temporarily, which meant I had a window of opportunity to gather more evidence before they went completely underground. It was time to escalate from harassment to serious intelligence gathering. The next phase of my plan would require help, and I knew exactly who to ask. "Marlene," I said when I called her that night, "how would you like to do some real detective work?" "What did you have in mind?" "I need to know more about that third man who was meeting with Lila and Joel, and I need to find out what was in that envelope she was showing them." "Ethan, honey, that sounds like it might be getting into dangerous territory." Everything about this situation is dangerous territory. The question is whether I'm going to be the hunter or the prey. There was a long silence, and then Marlene sighed. "Okay. What do you need me to do?" The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 weeks after I'd started my investigation. Marlene called me at work, her voice tight with excitement and something else, concern. "Ethan, you need to get home, now." "What's wrong?" "I figured out who the third man is, and you're not going to like it. His name is Marcus Webb, and he's a private investigator." "A private investigator?" "It gets worse. I followed him yesterday after he met with Lila and Joel. He went to your house, Ethan. He was taking pictures, measuring things, looking through your garbage. They're building a case against you." I felt the world tilt sideways. "What kind of case?" "I don't know, but I managed to get close enough to hear part of their conversation today. They're meeting at the coffee shop on Main Street right now. Lila, Joel, and this Marcus guy. And Ethan. They're talking about making you disappear." "Disappear? What does that mean?" "I don't know exactly, but it doesn't sound good. You need to get down here and hear this for yourself." I told my supervisor I had a family emergency and left work immediately. 20 minutes later, I was parked across the street from Brewster's coffee shop, watching through the window as my wife, her boyfriend, and a private investigator planned what exactly. Marlene was waiting in her car next to mine. She handed me a small device that looked like a hearing aid. "It's a directional microphone," she explained. "I ordered it online after you asked me to help with surveillance. Point it at their table and you can hear everything they're saying." I aimed the device through my car window and put in the earpiece. Their voices came through clearly. "The insurance policy is for $500,000, Lila was saying. "It's been in effect for 12 years, so there won't be any questions about recent changes. Insurance policy, my life insurance policy. And you're sure about the beneficiaries?" This was a male voice I didn't recognize, presumably Marcus Webb. "I'm the primary beneficiary, Owen is secondary, but Owen's a minor, so I'd control his portion until he turns 18. Joel spoke up. "What about the house and other assets?" "Those would go through probate," Marcus replied. "But as the surviving spouse, Lila would inherit most everything. The boutique is already in her name only, so that's not an issue." "How long before I could remarry without it looking suspicious?" Lila asked. "I'd recommend waiting at least a year," Marcus said. "Maybe 18 months to be safe. You don't want anyone questioning the timing." I sat in my car, listening to my wife discuss the timeline for remarrying her boyfriend after my passing, and felt something break inside me. Not break. Transform. The hurt and betrayal I'd been carrying for weeks crystallized into something harder and colder. "The key is making it look accidental," Marcus continued. "Ethan works with electricity all day. Industrial accidents happen, especially when someone's been drinking on the job." "Ethan doesn't drink during work," Lila said. "He will that day. We'll make sure of it. A flask in his toolbox, alcohol on his breath, maybe some personal problems affecting his judgment. When he gets electrocuted, it'll look like a tragic accident caused by impaired decision-making. They were planning to murder me. Not just divorce me, not just take my assets, actually eliminate me and make it look like an accident." "What about Owen?" Joel asked. "He's going to be devastated." "Owen will be fine," Lila said dismissively. "He's resilient, and he'll have us to help him through it. Plus, the insurance money will set him up for college and beyond. In the long run, he'll be better off without Ethan holding him back." I wanted to storm into that coffee shop and confront them right then, but something held me back. Maybe it was shock, or maybe it was the electrician's instinct to understand the full circuit before making any changes. Either way, I kept listening. "When?" Lila asked. "Next week," Marcus replied. "I've been studying Ethan's work schedule and the hospital's electrical systems. There's a major maintenance project scheduled for Thursday night, upgrading the power grid in the cardiac wing. Ethan will be working alone, late shift, with access to high-voltage equipment. Perfect setup for an accident." "And you're sure this will work?" "I've done this before. The key is preparation and timing. We create the right conditions, make sure Ethan's in the wrong place at the wrong time, and let electricity do the rest. Quick, relatively painless, and completely believable." Relatively painless. How considerate of them. "What do we need to do?" Joel asked. "Nothing obvious. Just maintain your normal routines. Make sure you have solid alibis for Thursday night. Lila, you should probably plan to be somewhere public with witnesses. Maybe take in a movie with friends." "What about afterward? The investigation?" "There won't be much of an investigation. Industrial accidents are common, especially in hospitals. The insurance company might ask some routine questions, but they'll pay out. They always do." I'd heard enough. I turned off the microphone and sat back in my car seat, my mind racing. They had a plan to eliminate me, and it was scheduled for Thursday night, just 5 days away. "Did you get all that?" Marlene asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Ethan, we have to call the police. This is attempted murder." "Is it?" "They haven't actually done anything yet. And Marcus is right. If they set it up properly, it will look like an accident. Who's going to believe that my wife and her boyfriend conspired with a private investigator to electrocute me?" "But we have evidence." The recording won't be admissible in court. We obtained it through illegal surveillance. And even if it was admissible, all they have to do is claim they were discussing a fictional scenario, maybe a book plot or movie idea. Marlene stared at me. So what are you going to do? I watched through the coffee shop window as the three conspirators shook hands and prepared to leave. Lila looked happy, relaxed. Joel seemed nervous but excited. Marcus was all business, checking his phone and making notes. I'm going to beat them at their own game. What does that mean? It means they're expecting to face the old Ethan, the passive, oblivious husband who doesn't fight back. But that Ethan is gone. They eliminated him the moment they decided to eliminate me. I started my car and pulled out of the parking space. Marlene, I need you to document everything we just heard. Write down every detail you can remember, and I need you to keep watching them, but be careful. If they're willing to commit murder, they won't hesitate to hurt anyone who gets in their way. Where are you going? To work. I have some preparation to do. The next few days were the longest of my life. I went through the motions of normal routine while planning my survival. At work, I studied the electrical systems Marcus had mentioned, figuring out how they might try to sabotage them. At home, I acted like the oblivious husband they expected me to be. But underneath, I was preparing for war. I started by securing my evidence. All the financial records, photographs, recordings, and surveillance notes went into a safety deposit box at a bank across town. I also prepared a detailed letter explaining everything I'd discovered, along with instructions for its delivery if something happened to me. Next, I modified my work schedule. The hospital maintenance project was real, and I was indeed scheduled to work alone on Thursday night. But I arranged for a backup. My supervisor, Ed Haskins, would be on call and would check on me periodically. I also installed a hidden camera in the electrical room where the work would take place. But my real preparation was psychological. I'd spent weeks being reactive, responding to their moves instead of making my own. That was about to change. On Wednesday night, I made my move. I called Joel's cell phone at 11 p.m. when I knew he'd be home alone. Hello? He sounded sleepy. Coach Rayton, this is Ethan Calloway. There was a long pause. Mr. Calloway, this is unexpected. Is everything okay? That depends on your definition of okay. I think we need to talk. About what? About my wife, about the Pine Lodge Resort, about Marcus Webb. Should I continue or do you get the picture? Another pause, longer this time. When Joel spoke again, his voice was different, harder, more alert. I don't know what you think you know. I know everything, Joel. The affair, the divorce plans, the private investigator. I know about Thursday night. Silence. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to meet me tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the electrical substation behind the hospital. Come alone. Don't call Lila, don't call Marcus, don't call anyone. If you do, or if you don't show up, copies of everything I know go to the police, the school board, and the local newspaper. You can't prove anything. Want to bet? I've got photos, recordings, financial records, and eyewitness testimony. I've got enough evidence to destroy your career, send you to prison, and make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you are. What do you want? I want to look you in the eye when I tell you that your plan failed. I want you to understand that you picked the wrong man to mess with, and I want you to know what's going to happen next. And if I don't come, then you'll find out the hard way. 7 p.m., Joel. Don't be late. I hung up and immediately called Lila. Ethan, it's late, is everything. Cut the act, Lila. I know about Joel, I know about Marcus Webb, and I know what you're planning for tomorrow night. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. I don't know what you're talking about. Pine Lodge Resort. Ring a bell? How about a private investigator who specializes in making accidents look convincing? Or maybe we should discuss my life insurance policy and your plans for spending the money. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. How long have you known? Long enough. Long enough to document everything, long enough to prepare, and long enough to plan my response. Ethan, please, let me explain. No explanations, no excuses, no apologies. You made your choice when you decided to have me eliminated rather than just divorced. Now you get to live with the consequences. What are you going to do? You'll find out. But Lila? If I were you, I'd start thinking about what life is going to be like when everyone in town knows what you really are. I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow night, one way or another, this would all be over. Thursday arrived gray and cold, with the kind of persistent drizzle that made everything look bleak. I went to work as scheduled, but I could barely concentrate on routine maintenance tasks. My mind was focused on the evening ahead, the confrontation that would determine whether I lived or faded. At 6:30 p.m., I made my way to the electrical substation behind St. Mary's Hospital. It was a small building that housed the main power distribution equipment for the hospital complex. I had keys to the facility, and more importantly, I knew every wire, switch, and circuit in the place. Joel was already there when I arrived, standing under a streetlight near the entrance. He looked nervous but determined, like a man who'd made up his mind to see something through regardless of the consequences. You came, I said. Did I have a choice? Everyone has choices, Joel. You chose to seduce my wife. You chose to help her plan my murder. Now you get to choose how this ends. We stood facing each other in the dim light, and I could see him evaluating his options. He was younger than me, probably stronger, definitely more athletic. But I had the advantage of knowing exactly where we were and what resources were available to me. What do you want, Ethan? I want the truth, all of it. How long has this been going on? Whose idea was the murder plot? What exactly were you planning to do tomorrow night? Joel looked around nervously, as if expecting backup to arrive. You're wearing a wire, aren't you? This is all being recorded. Does it matter? You're already caught. The only question is whether you're going to cooperate or make this harder on yourself. He was quiet for a long moment, then seemed to deflate. It started 6 months ago. Lila came to a parent-teacher conference and we got to talking. One thing led to another. Whose idea was it to eliminate me instead of just getting divorced? That was Marcus. Lila wanted a divorce, but she was worried about losing assets, especially the house and her boutique. Marcus suggested that the other option would be more profitable. And you went along with it. I didn't want to at first, but Lila said you were holding her back, that you didn't appreciate her, that Owen would be better off without you around. He looked up at me with something that might have been guilt. She made it sound like we'd be doing you a favor. A favor. Right. I stepped closer to him. What was supposed to happen tomorrow night? Marcus was going to sabotage the electrical panel you'd be working on, make it look like a short circuit caused by faulty equipment. When you touched the wrong wire, you'd be electrocuted. He said it would be quick. And where would you and Lila be during this accident? She was going to the movies with some friends from her book club. I was supposed to be at home grading papers. Solid alibis. What about afterward? How long before you two started your new life together? Joel's face flushed. Look, Ethan, I know how this sounds, but I really do care about Lila. This wasn't just some casual thing. You care about her so much that you're willing to murder her husband. It wasn't supposed to be murder. Marcus said it would look like an accident. Joel, let me explain something to you about electricity. I moved closer to the substation building, gesturing for him to follow. When someone gets electrocuted, it's not quick and painless like in the movies. The current causes your muscles to contract violently. You can't let go of whatever's shocking you. Your heart goes into fibrillation. You're conscious and in agony while your body cooks from the inside out. He was looking pale now. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. It was easier to let Marcus handle the details while you and Lila planned your future together. That's when I heard the car doors slam. Two figures emerged from the darkness. Lila and a man I didn't recognize but assumed was Marcus Webb. They approached slowly, and I could see that Marcus was carrying something in his right hand. "Well, well," Marcus called out as they got closer. "Looks like we've got ourselves a family reunion." Lila looked terrified but determined. "Ethan, please, we can work this out. We can find a solution that works for everyone." The solution was supposed to be my passing, remember? Marcus stepped forward, and I could see now that he was holding a gun. "Actually, that's still the plan. We just had to move up the timeline." "You're going to shoot me? That's not going to look much like an industrial accident." "No, but it'll look like self-defense. See, we're going to tell the police that you found out about the affair and went crazy. You lured Joel here to eliminate him, and when we tried to intervene, you attacked us. I had to shoot you to protect everyone." "And you think that story will hold up?" "It will when they find the threatening phone calls you made, the evidence of your stalking behavior, and Joel's testimony about how unstable you've been acting." I looked at the three of them, my wife, her boyfriend, and their hired eliminator, and felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. "There's just one problem with your story." "What's that?" "You assumed I came here unprepared." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small device, a remote control for the electrical substation's main power grid. "Do you know what happens when you overload a power grid, Marcus? All the safety systems shut down automatically. Every light, every electrical device in a quarter-mile radius goes dark, including the security cameras that have been recording this entire conversation." Marcus raised his gun. "Put that down." "I don't think so." I held up the remote. "See, the thing about being an electrician is that you learn to think ahead. You plan for contingencies. You make sure you have backup systems." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that this entire area is wired with backup recording devices that I installed yesterday. I'm talking about the detailed confession that Joel just gave me, which was transmitted live to a secure server. And I'm talking about the fact that you're all under surveillance right now." As if on cue, floodlights suddenly illuminated the area around the substation. Car doors slammed, and I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching from multiple directions. "Police! Everyone freeze!" Detective Sarah Martinez emerged from the shadows with her weapon drawn, followed by two uniformed officers. "Mr. Webb, drop your weapon immediately." Marcus looked around wildly, realizing he was surrounded. "This isn't what it looks like." "It looks like you're threatening an innocent man with a weapon while conspiring to commit murder," Detective Martinez said. "Drop the gun, now." Marcus hesitated for a moment, then let the gun fall to the ground. The officers moved in quickly to secure the scene. "Ethan Calloway?" Detective Martinez approached me. "Are you all right, sir?" "I'm fine, Detective. Thank you for responding so quickly. We got your message about the threat to your life. When you didn't show up at the station as planned, we came looking for you." I looked at Lila, who was staring at me with a mixture of shock and hatred. "You set us up." "I protected myself. There's a difference." Joel was being handcuffed by one of the officers. "Ethan, I'm sorry. I never wanted it to go this far. Save it for your lawyer, Joel." As the police led the three conspirators away, Detective Martinez stayed behind to take my statement. "How long have you known about the plot against your life?" she asked. "About a week. I've been documenting everything, gathering evidence, trying to build a case that would stick. You took a big risk confronting them like this. It was the only way to get them to incriminate themselves. I needed them to confess on the record, with witnesses. The recording equipment you mentioned, that was all legal?" "Completely. I had every right to record conversations on my own property and in public spaces. And since they were threatening my life, I was justified in taking protective measures." Detective Martinez nodded. "We'll need you to come to the station tomorrow to give a formal statement and turn over all your evidence." Of course. As the police cars pulled away with their prisoners, I stood alone in the parking lot behind the hospital where I'd worked for 18 years, the place where my wife and her boyfriend had planned to eliminate me. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Marlene. "Saw the police cars. Are you okay?" I texted back, "I'm fine. It's over." But even as I typed those words, I knew it wasn't really over. There would be trials, testimony, media attention. Owen would have to deal with the fact that his mother had tried to have his father eliminated. There would be divorce proceedings, custody battles, and the slow process of rebuilding a life that had been completely destroyed. But I was alive, and Lila, Joel, and Marcus were going to prison. As I walked back to my truck, I thought about the moment when Marcus had pointed that gun at me. For a split second, I'd wondered if my plan would work, if the police would arrive in time, if I'd miscalculated somewhere along the way. But I'd learned something important over the past few weeks. I wasn't the passive, oblivious man that everyone thought I was. When pushed to the edge, when my life and my son's future were threatened, I could fight back. I could plan, strategize, and execute a complex operation to protect myself and the people I cared about. The old Ethan Calloway might have been a victim, but the new one, the one who'd been forged in the fire of betrayal and attempted murder, was something else entirely. I was a survivor,